Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Zenith Glow Astrology podcast, and my name is Christina. I will be your host for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Love you. Grateful for you. All right, today we are going to be talking about the recent change in signs that our lunar nodes just went through. This is the Pisces Virgo shift, previously the Aries Libra nodal axis. So this just happened a couple of days ago at the time of this recording on January 11th, pretty much in coordination with this full moon in Cancer that we are experiencing now. And yes, there is some significance to that in relation to these nodes changing signs. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk first a little bit about what are the nodes? Now, you may already know this, and we're not going to go too in detail on it, but I do want to review a little bit. What do the nodes mean in astrology? How do they relate to you? What's the difference between natal nodes and transiting nodes? We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between nodes in a general sense and how they pertain to evolutionary astrology in particular. And we're going to talk more about what does it mean to have them shifting into this new axis, this new polarity from fire and air to water and earth now. So let's dive in. Okay, first and foremost, the lunar nodes are not actual planetary bodies in astrology. They are calculated points, and they have to do with the positions of the moon's orbit as it crosses the sun's orbit. In a nutshell, it's very, very technical, my explanation there. Just know that they're not real planetary bodies, they're just calculated points, but they are really, really important. They are very significant. I always recommend looking at your nodes in your natal chart to get a better understanding of who you are, who you were, who you want to be. They are very, very crucial in that sense. So yeah, what do the moon's nodes actually mean astrologically speaking? Well, first and foremost, let's look at it in a general sense, like looking at your natal chart. So the moon's nodes pertain to our past and our future. The moon has to do with our past emotional conditioning. And so it makes sense that the nodes, which are naturally connected to the moon, would have some kind of correlation to our past. Now, from an evolutionary perspective or a wider consciousness perspective, this has to do with our past lives and our current and future selves. So in Vedic astrology, they refer to the moon's nodes as the head and the tail of the dragon. And then when you learn to balance your nodes, it's called riding the dragon, which, kind of sounds like a metaphor for drug abuse, but but really, it's actually very cool. And it does symbolize coming into your personal power. The tail of the dragon would be the south node, and this represents your past. So, for people that don't believe in reincarnation, which probably none of those people are listening to this podcast, but like for clients that I've had that don't necessarily, hold that belief system, I do let them know that your south node also pertains to your past, current life, your early life, your upbringing, your roots, because we kind of carry in that inertia from past lives when we first enter this life. And that's exactly what the South Node is. It's like this karmic inertia that we're carrying forward. And so it does represent your karma. But keep in mind that karma is not always a bad thing. It's just accumulated energy. And it's something that needs to be balanced out. So when you accumulate a lot of something good, you want to share it with other people. And when you accumulate a lot of something that's not so good, maybe a little bit more negative, you want to try to release it and balance it with something that's the opposite of that. The South Node then represents everything that we already worked on in past lives. It's the energy that we're carrying forward. And you can see this in your natal chart by the sign and the house that the South Node is in, as well as its planetary ruler and any aspects that that planet is making, as well as aspects to the nodes. But again, let's just keep it simple. The sign and house that your South Node is in. This tells you a lot about yourself when you come into this life. I'm telling you, pick up a book that's about the nodes. I highly recommend Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller. It's a really great book that goes super in depth on the nodes. Incredibly helpful. Real quick, I want to apologize for any background noise. Jazzy is with us again, and he is chewing a bone once again. So yeah, giving us his love, giving us his support. Thank you, Jazzy. Eva's here too. She's just much quieter. So, yeah, the South Node is really indicative of your unconscious tendencies, your behaviors, your demeanor, what you naturally deviate toward. It symbolizes both gifts and skills and talents and abilities that you bring into this life because you've already mastered those things in past lives. It also brings in like old patterns, old conditioning, old behaviors, things that don't necessarily serve you very well in ways that you're imbalanced because you tend to do those things too much. And so in that way you want to evolve away from it. And it can express itself in negative ways. So a little bit of everything there. The North Node, conversely, is the head of the dragon, and this symbolizes our destiny. It's our dharma versus our karma. So it's what we are meant to embody in this life to continue evolving spiritually. So I always tell people that the North Node is kind of like riding a bike for the first time. It's awkward and maybe a little scary, and you're not really sure what to do, or other things that you've tried for the first time. I don't know. Just, I know that's a cliche example, but it's true. It's like something that you have to learn. You don't already know it. You haven't already mastered it. So it's unfamiliar to you. But when you do begin to step into that North Node embodiment, suddenly it's like, ooh, I'm riding the bike. I feel free. I can go anywhere. I can be fast. I can experience the wind on my face and just all this expansion and new experience. It lights you up. It brings a deep sense of fulfillment, and it really does help you balance all of those South Node traits. Because again, nodes are always exactly opposite of each other. That's something to know if you don't already know. They're always exactly 180 degrees apart, no matter where they are. So if you know your North Node, you know your South Node, and vice versa. And I've talked about this before, but polarities in astrology, in other words, oppositions, they're not truly opposite in the sense that they are converse in every way, that they are completely different in every way. Polarities in astrology always hold common threads that tie them together. And it's through those common threads that we can learn how to balance them. That's essentially what you want to do with the nodes, is you want to learn how to balance these things out. Like I said, you bring in a wealth of experience and knowledge from past lives, whether that's conscious or unconscious, the things that you're naturally good at, that you naturally want to do and feel good doing in this life, those are things that you bring in from past lives. And you can use those skills and apply them to your North Node. And you want to do that because, again, the North Node is a little awkward. So you want to bring in some of that confidence that you have doing other things to kind of help you accomplish whatever you're setting out to do with your North Node. So this is essentially what the nodes are in a nutshell. Now I'm talking about your natal chart, or like in a general sense. You have your past karma and your future dharma or destiny or purpose. And then you want to learn how to ride the dragon, so to speak, by balancing those two things. You're not deviating towards the negative characteristics of either side. You're learning to balance the polarity in harmony. And that makes you a master of yourself, of your life. Wow, I just suddenly had one of those moments where I'm like, oh, Christina, you better listen to yourself after you record this because it's probably going to be relevant to you for contemplation later. Oh, good Lord. Told you guys, boots on the ground. I'm living it with you. And then real quick, for evolutionary astrology in particular, which looks at Pluto to tell us the desires of the soul and what we are looking to evolve, the nodes tie very specifically into this dynamic of your soul's evolutionary path. And basically, on a very general level, Pluto represents what the soul is working on to evolve in this life and what you've been working on in past lives. And the nodes show you how you're going about doing that. So you could have Pluto in Libra, wherein you've been working on relationships and everything tied into relationship dynamics, power struggles, etc. Through relationships, you're meant to evolve into Pluto in Aries energy, which is finding your power through independence and through individualization. And then let's say your nodes are in Cancer and Capricorn, South Node in Cancer, North Node in Capricorn. We would say then that, well, in past lives, you were working on learning about relationships, and the way you did that was through your South Node in Cancer. Maybe you had to work on emotional connections with people, really learning how to listen and really learning how to nurture. In this life, if you're meant to evolve Pluto in Aries and become independent, then you would do that via your North Node in Capricorn, which would be, cultivating personal authority, taking responsibility, being disciplined, etc. So that's just an example of how that works in evolutionary astrology. Now let's talk about transiting nodes, because what in the world do transiting nodes mean? If you have your own personal nodes that already show you this blueprint of who you are and what you're working on in this life, the transiting nodes are telling you what kind of chapter or what is the current progress or the current lesson within lessons that's ongoing for all of us in a collective way. And it's going to show up differently for each person, but those archetypes and those themes of the nodes are going to be there nonetheless. So I also real quick wanted to mention, in case you're wondering, so when the nodes change signs, they do it approximately every 18 months, so about a year and a half. So we're going to be in this North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo energy for the next 18 months. And then it takes them approximately 18 years to go full circle around the zodiac. And that is true for your natal nodes as well. If it takes about 18 years, you can see where the nodes are right now in relation to where they are in your chart to kind of figure out how long it's going to take them to come around again. And then, sorry, 2 more little notes before I get into this. I know I'm bouncing all over the place here. So we also have something called nodal returns in astrology, which is when the nodes return to the position they are in your natal chart. And that is a highly significant time in an individual's life. Makes sense. It took 18 years for it to happen. It's like akin to having a Saturn return or a Jupiter return, or, it is very significant, especially because we're talking about your destiny and your past karma. So when you experience a nodal return, in a nutshell, it helps you realign your life to get into harmony with whatever that, riding the dragon trajectory is for you. It sort of like upgrades your path. It gives you new challenges. It gives you new ambitions or new aspirations. And it really helps you to step into your nodal expression, as it were, in a newly embodied way, akin to however you have matured in your life, whatever lessons you've already cultivated. But yeah, it's kind of like setting you off on a new path, a new trajectory. So, fun little fact about me, I experienced my nodal return in early 2023, and I ended up launching my blog a couple months later. That's kind of an example, and this is obviously an unfolding story for me. I'm still working on developing what I'm meant to do and how I'm meant to do it. But it was definitely like a big shift for me to actually launch into an astrology practice in an official sense and start sharing with the world what I've learned, and what I'm passionate about. So that's just kind of an example of how it will shift you in your life in certain ways to kind of get you more into alignment with whatever that trajectory is. Now, the second thing I was going to mention is that you can also experience a reverse return with your nodes, which is when the transiting north node becomes conjunct with your natal south node, and then the transiting south node is conjunct with your natal north node. What? What does that mean? Well, this would obviously happen about every 9 years because it would take about half the time for the nodes to reach that position. This is basically not quite as life altering as, let's say, a nodal return, but it does bring up kind of a process for review and self-evaluation and gets you to examine what you're doing with your life and your life's purpose. And basically, it will, through the transiting north node, you can think of the north node as like the present and the future. And so it will conjunct with your south node to bring up positive traits from the south node or things that you've been continuously implementing or need to implement at this point in your life, things that you brought in from the past that are relevant right now. And it kind of highlights those things for you. And then on the flip side, when you have the transiting south node conjunct the north node, it might be showing you how you are lacking in your north node expression or how you are maybe expressing the more negative traits of that north node. Because we always want to embody the positivity, the higher, most optimal expression of each sign. But, that could show up potentially in negative ways if we're not being balanced. And so once again, it's calling your attention to balancing these things. So just a little tidbit on that. But yeah, let's talk about where we are now with transiting nodes. If your north node is in Aries, let's say you just experienced a nodal return, and your south node is in Libra, but now the transiting nodes have shifted to Pisces and Virgo. What that is telling you is that there's a new layer of unfoldment of your destiny, and you're balancing your past, your south node. And it's echoing or it's coming through the energies, the archetypes of Pisces and Virgo. And remember that in your natal chart, regardless of whether you actually have planets or points like the nodes in a sign or in all of the signs or whatever, if you have signs that are quote unquote empty in your chart, it doesn't mean that you don't hold those archetypes within you or that you're not expressing those energies. You are. Each of us has all of the archetypes within us, and we express all of them to different degrees, different varying degrees. And you can see where these things are most likely to show up by looking at what house those signs are held in. So it's just something to be aware of. You might be like, well, I don't have any Pisces or Virgo in my chart, so who cares? But at the same time, you do still express those energies, right? I mean, you might not be as expressive as someone who has their sun in Virgo or their moon in Pisces or whatever, but you're still holding those archetypes and you're still experiencing it together with the rest of the collective. What we are looking at is that second or like another layer being added on to how you would express your Aries North Node, Libra South Node. So let's just use that example, okay? So your North Node in Aries, you've learned that, okay, I have a special destiny. I need to be more independent. I'm going to strike out on my own. I'm going to stand up for myself more. And I'm going to balance this with my past, which is really good at listening, really good at mediating, very sensitive to everyone's needs, and able to look at things in a very detached, objective way. Libra. So you know that you've started a new chapter, you're headed in that direction. Now we have the transiting nodes in Pisces and Virgo. A new layer has been added. Okay, I have a special destiny. I have to be independent, strike out on my own, Aries, but now I'm going to look at the Pisces dimension of how that might work. How can I bring greater sense of spirituality into that? How can I bring more empathy and compassion into that, more acceptance of others into this unfolding destiny mission that I'm seeking to accomplish? I might need to stand up for myself more, but is there a way that I can do that while still holding compassion for other people, while still being empathetic and sensitive towards other people? Maybe I need to be like a little bit more artistic about the way I'm doing this. Maybe I need to cultivate more of my psychic abilities or senses as I dive into this Aries North Node work. On the flip side, okay, I've worked with some of this Libra South Node stuff. I've been working on relationships and learning not to self sacrifice too much, or learning how to make decisions and not deliberate too much. But now this Virgo energy is coming in. Okay, well, are there ways that I can be, again, too self sacrificing? Because Virgo does tend to self sacrifice. Are there ways that I'm being too perfectionistic in my relationships? Maybe I've been working so hard at not expressing the overly imbalanced aspects of Libra that I've deviated into this hyper perfectionism of Virgo. Maybe I need to focus a little bit more on my personal health and in order to be more present for my relationships. Maybe I'm being overly critical of myself and others. Maybe I'm paying too much attention to detail, and that's actually negatively affecting my relationships. These are just some examples, but these are kind of the energies of Pisces and Virgo, and you can see how that might apply to your South Node and your North Node. So, again, it's kind of like an unfolding story that's going on. And so, since we're on the subject, yeah, let's talk about that. What does it mean to have the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo? Well, again, the South Node would be indicating stuff that we're deviating towards and that we want to harness the positive qualities of while getting rid of whatever negative qualities or imbalanced qualities are inherent in that sign. So, I already kind of mentioned some of them, some of the more positive qualities of Virgo. It is striving to be of service to other people. Virgo rules the sixth house, and that is a bridge house, meaning that the first, 1 through 5 houses are all about development of the self and the ego and the inner experience. And then when you get into the seventh house and moving through, the 11th house, you're dealing with the outer world, with relationships with other people. So you're very outwardly focused. So the sixth house is like a bridge between those things. It's when we learn to take the ego self and humble it in a way that we can make ourselves useful and of service to other people. How can I take all these talents and things that make me special, things I've learned about myself, and apply them in a practical way that actually supports others? So this is like a positive expression of Virgo, and it is wow, it's ruled by Mercury, so it is laser focused. It has this incredible ability to really sort through, organize details, very, very detail oriented. And it is really good at spotting flaws. Now, that obviously can be a good thing or a bad thing, depends on what you're using it for and in which way you're using it, to what degree you're using it. So sometimes you do need to be able to dissect information and analyze things in order to see if there's stuff that needs to be fixed or improved upon. And in that way, Virgo can be a good thing. And Virgo is very health conscious. It's, very rooted in the body. It's ruled by Mercury, but it's an earth sign. So it's very much focused about health and focused on health and really again, it rules the sixth house. So daily routines and pets and our daily obligations and stuff. So it's very practical and it's very committed to positive routines and striving for service and perfection, always trying to improve upon itself, right? Virgo is very good at setting boundaries. And again, boundaries show up in a lot of ways. That can come through relationships, but it can also be like personal boundaries. Like maybe I'm going to make myself a schedule for the day to make sure that I don't spend too much time doing one particular thing because I've got this whole list of things that I have to get done. And I know it doesn't sound super exciting per se, but it is a necessary part of our existence, right? Because when we don't have these things, we tend to get lost. We tend to become disillusioned. We tend to become violated, whether that's by other people pushing our boundaries or whether that's us violating ourselves. That sounds really wrong. Whether that's us not respecting ourselves, not giving ourselves the necessary parameters and definitions that we need so that we can actually manifest and create what we want. And that's kind of the beauty of when you balance this Virgo Pisces polarity. So, real quick, negative traits of Virgo. Hypercriticism. Man, when you can focus on flaws and you have a desire to perfect them, guess what happens sometimes? You become hypercritical, and often that criticism is directed towards yourself. But then, of course, that doesn't feel very good. And so it ends up getting projected onto other people. It's like, I'm not feeling good about myself, and I'm feeling weighed down by my own imperfections. So I'm going to apply my hawk like lens, this laser focus that I have, to other people and tell them what's wrong with them. And again, sometimes it can be used in a good way. Like sometimes people need to hear, hey, maybe it would do you good to eat more fruit. Or, maybe you should drink some more water. Or, hey, if you gave yourself like an extra 10 minutes in the morning, you probably wouldn't be late to work anymore. Whatever. Like sometimes people need to hear these things, but it's all in the way you deliver it and the intent that you hold when you deliver that information, right? If you're seeking to be of service to others, you're going to come from your heart and you're going to have sensitivity and compassion, which, by the way, are Pisces traits. If you're coming from this overly harsh and critical, everything must be perfect, no wire hangers, as Mommy Dearest says, and then the next thing you know, you're beating your child with wire hangers. Oh my God, that's terrible. Have you guys seen that movie? It is, that little girl's name was Christina, by the way. So I don't know, maybe that stuck with me through my childhood. But anyway, it can come through as being too rigid and just too focused on perfecting things. Sometimes Virgo gets lost in details. It has such an eye for detail that sometimes it loses sight of the whole picture. These are just some of the things that can go wrong with Virgo. Now let's talk about Pisces. Pisces is, the dreamer, and it's about belief systems and it's about consciousness, collective consciousness. It's spirituality, it's music, and ruled by Neptune, it is the higher octave of Venus, so it is unconditional love. So Pisces accepts everyone, it's compassionate and very loving. Yeah, let's all hold hands in a circle and chant Kumbaya, and everything is great with the world. The problem with Pisces is that it can be too accepting. It can be too fluid with its boundaries. Yeah, let's love everyone, but when people are disrespecting you and abusing you or manipulating you, you also need to set boundaries, right? Because you also need to love yourself. And that's the thing. It's like Pisces is connected to collective consciousness, so it's really easy for the ego to dissolve in that soup and you lose sight of who you are. Pisces needs to balance that by using Virgo's discernment and ability to set boundaries and make schedules and be organized, right? Pisces is such a beautiful dreamer and has such strong imagination. The problem with that is you can get lost in your imagination. You can just live in your daydreams and feel perfectly happy, but when it comes to your physical 3D reality, you turn around and nothing is manifested in your life. You're living in your dreams, literally. You're being a daydreamer. So again, it's like these two energies need to be balanced with each other. Now, both of them have a desire to be of service to other people. Both of them want to help. They both have deep compassion for other people and really want to make other people's lives better. They just kind of go about it in different ways. And so, together, if you balance the skills of Pisces and Virgo, you can accomplish a lot, right? Take those big, beautiful dreams that you have and ground them into something tangible. Take that eye for detail and striving towards perfectionism and balance it with love and compassion and acceptance. And that goes for other people as much as it does for yourself. So these are things that we're all kind of working on balancing. And this is where the energy is focused right now as the nodes are transiting. Now, if you look at the houses in your natal chart in which these nodes are transiting, it gives you more information, right? And that's kind of how it applies to you personally versus the collective, because we're all collectively dealing with these energies now. So, looking at the houses in your chart, that will tell you what area you're going to be applying this energy to. And then again, ultimately, this feeds back to whatever your natal north and south node are, whatever your destiny is. And then, if you're looking at evolutionary astrology, whatever your Pluto is and what you're evolving into with that. So, another thing I wanted to mention about this nodal shift is that, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, this pretty much happened in coordination with this full moon in Cancer that we are experiencing right now as I record this, which was a significant event. And I wrote an article about that if you want to dive into it deeper. But just know that there was is a grand sextile happening at the same time. And the nodes are part of that grand sextile, meaning that all around the zodiac wheel, we have a series of sextiles. Well, we have 6 sextiles, 2 trines, all together, creating this big Merkaba shape, which is obviously highly significant. There is big spiritual connotation with that. It can be a little bit spicy, this energy. And I was finding that out like right away. I tend to feel things a little bit before they become exact. And ooh, mama, yesterday I was having quite the emotional shift and experience with this full moon and all these different aspects. But I digress. So yeah, the reason why I'm mentioning this is that the nodes shifted signs like right before the full moon happened. So it's within the full moon window. Now, anytime something new happens, we can consider it like a birth, right? Because a birth is something new coming into fruition, into existence. So this is true, whether a baby is born, whether you are having a birthday, whether you're starting a new job, whether you're going on a date for the first time or getting married. All of these things are like new events that are happening. And whenever that happens in astrology, we can actually take a snapshot of it as if you were being born to look at what other dynamics are going on through transits and whatnot to tell us what is the blueprint signature for this particular event or thing. With the nodes changing signs at the same time as there being a full moon in Cancer, if we were to consider January 11th as being the birth of the new nodal shift, we could look at all the other aspects happening simultaneously to say, hey, what's the birth chart for this event? What kind of additional energy signatures are going to be inherent within the expression of this nodal transit over the next 18 months? Does that make sense? So, in other words, the energy of the full moon in Cancer, along with all of its associated aspects, which again I talk about in my article, I will link it to this podcast episode. All those things are kind of inherent in the expression of this new nodal shift, which means that the nodes, as they transit through Pisces and Virgo over the next 18 months, are going to carry an undercurrent flavor of what this full moon in Cancer has brought us. Whoa. And again, it was a doozy. So, we've got this Merkaba energy tied into this. There is big spiritual juju tied into this full moon, not to mention, it is hugely emotional and dealing with the core of the self, the seat of the soul, the moon and Cancer both tie into your 4th house, and that has to do with your emotional conditioning and your past. And then again, the nodes themselves are connected to the moon. So this is like really potent, extra strong kind of energy. So as we go through learning these lessons of Pisces and Virgo and cultivating the Pisces energy and balancing the Virgo energy and riding the dragon in this new way, we're also carrying the echo forward of what was started on this new moon. This full moon in Cancer. So yeah, think about that. Like, what are we bringing forward with us? What kind of lessons have been coming up for you? What have you been releasing? And how could that potentially tie into these themes of Pisces and Virgo? And then again, take a look at the houses in your chart. Where are these things happening? The full moon in Cancer, yes, that tells you one piece of the puzzle, but which house is it happening in? And is it aspecting any other planets in your chart? Because if we're talking about releasing stuff or harvesting, full moon, things coming full circle, things coming back around as a complete whole picture, and then we're relinquishing what's no longer serving as we get ready to gear up for the new moon in Aquarius at the end of the month, starting a new chapter. Yeah, like what energy are you bringing forward into the lessons of these nodes over the next 18 months? Just kind of an interesting thing to consider. And again, like what houses is that happening in? As an example, I will use myself as an example. I believe that this full moon for me is happening in my third house. So I am releasing emotions and past conditioning that are tied into lots of things. My perceptions, the way that I communicate, the way that I learn, and the way that I teach, relationships with my family, and especially childhood friends and people from my past like that. And I'm definitely releasing insecurities that are tied into those things, right? Because Cancer is about cultivating emotional nourishment and security. And if we have a full moon in Cancer, that means we need to let go of things that aren't serving our highest good in those respects. Now, at the same time, I talked about, where is this full moon making aspects in your chart? Do you have any planets that are at or kind of close to 23 degrees? I do. And one of them, I actually have several, but one of them that was key for me that I literally, you guys, I swear, it's like those who can't do teach. I was having just like such a crazy day yesterday, just energy wise, intensity wise. And I went, what the heck is going on? And then I remembered, I thought about it more. And I was like, oh, yeah, my natal moon is part of this sextile going on with the grand sextile. It's tied into it because Chiron is actually conjunct with my natal moon right now. So that means that my natal moon is actually sextile with the full moon. So if you've got moon on moon action happening in your chart, that means like really big emotions and stuff from your past, like buried shadow subconscious stuff is going to come up. And that's exactly what happened to me. So that's just an example. You can look at your chart and see if there are other dimensions of your experience connecting into this blueprint. And then again, keep in mind, we're talking really about the nodes here. The nodes are going to keep moving forward. They're going to be bringing in these lessons. And how is that going to shape all the things that were connected to this pattern at the start of their shift? That might be something for you to just hold in your awareness and make notes about over the next 18 months. Just kind of consider, especially if you are a student of astrology. It's all about observation and analysis. So take note. How is this affecting me? How is it affecting other people? And see how it shows up. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to note was just the fact that we're having like this crisscross right now between the nodes shifting from Aries, Libra into Pisces, Virgo, and the fact that we are now having Saturn and Neptune shift from Pisces into Aries. So I kind of think that the nodes are like laying the groundwork for those big collective lessons that are about to come through those outer planets shifting signs. I think that we've already been working with this energy of figuring out this Aries North Node stuff. By the way, I wrote a really in-depth article when the nodes originally changed signs 18 months ago, and I will link that to this podcast episode as well. It will give you an idea of what that energy signature was for the nodes moving through Aries and Libra, which is kind of nice to look back on now that they've changed signs. You can kind of see how it applied to you. And it will give you, again, just more information of how this energy might show up as we move forward with different archetypes now. And then I also talk about more information on the nodes in general there, just for those of you that are interested. But yeah, we've got this, we've been working on this Aries North Node, Libra South Node stuff. And now we're having Saturn and Neptune move into Aries. So I think that we really needed to step into our new calling, our new sense of destiny, sense of identity, sense of individuality, and the ways that we have reworked our relationships with other people and the ways that we have dealt with our shadow selves, because that's part of the Libra archetype as well, right? Because our shadows are always reflected to us through other people. We've had to take all of those lessons and work with them now, because now we're having these big collective planets, especially Neptune, that's going to be working in those archetypes. I mean, Neptune's going to be there for a while now. What is that, like 12 years? Don't quote me on that, somewhere around there. And then Saturn will be there, for the next 3 years, 3.5 years. And Saturn is, our lord of karma. It delivers big lessons, and they're going to be conjunct with each other at one point, and that's going to be really big energy. So especially having these outer planets shift into these signs, it's like the nodes have been laying the groundwork for us. We've had to figure out how to balance our past, current, and future in order to deal with this energy as we come into it. And why would we need to do that? Well, we need to upgrade. We need to shift into our higher timeline, because all archetypes in astrology carry positive and negative expressions, and we should always be striving to express the most positive expression as we can, if that makes sense. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned the reason why the nodes were able to go through Aries and Libra and are now moving into Pisces and Virgo is because they always move opposite of the rest of the planets. The nodes move backwards, if you will. That's another kind of interesting type of energy to consider. But and one more thing. I'm just gonna keep adding stuff, guys. The show's not over. You thought it was over. Silly you. Another thing to consider is the quality of energy. Aries and Libra are both cardinal signs. They carry cardinal quality of energy, meaning that they are self-initiating and that they have a desire to strive forward and to accomplish things. It's kind of like a pushing forward type of energy. Now we are moving into mutable energy, which is both Pisces and Virgo. Mutable energy is it's very flexible and it's very dynamic energy. And I've once heard it described like a centrifuge. If you were to describe this type of energy, it's like energy that starts at the center and it kind of spins outward away from itself. And if you think about any of the mutable signs, this does make sense. A lot of these signs are very outwardly focused and they tend to shift around and focus on lots of different things. It's like the cardinal signs are more directly focused, able to harness like one thing. Like Aries, I have a special destiny. Libra, I'm thinking about my relationships. Capricorn, I got my career. Cancer, looking at my home, whatever. So very basic examples, but they're very singly focused. And then mutable energy is like, you can juggle a lot and it can be very dynamic in that way. And you can be very flexible, and that's a nice thing. But it could also be like kind of flaky and kind of all over the place. And by the way, I have a stellium in Sagittarius, which is a mutable sign. So I'm speaking again from personal experience. It took me a very long time to cultivate enough discipline to actually get things done. Because it's kind of like, I've heard some people describe it like sparkle pony syndrome, where you're like, ooh, what's that? That's shiny. Okay, I'm going to go look at this. Oh, wait, what's that over there? Now I'm going to go do this. That is a little bit like the mutable energy. Again, we might all be dealing with focusing, especially with Saturn moving into Aries. delivering those lessons in discipline and striking out on our own, we're going to also be balancing that with this mutable energy. That is the last thing that I was going to say about all that. And I hope this was informative. I hope you all enjoy this nodal transit. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them below in the comment area or send me an email or whatever. I love to hear from you all. Please subscribe to this blog. Please follow me on social media. I will post links. If you feel it is in your heart to do so, please send me a donation. I am super grateful, incredibly grateful for your support. And share this far and wide. I love you all. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you next time. Bye.